Alright guys, we got a video by Raftel King, and this is actually a pretty good one. Are Bloodlines and Prophecy ruining One Piece? Now this is a unique video, and more especially just a unique title, right? This is like a real question. Video should have way more views than it has. It only has 5K views in 3 days. It should have way more just based on the title alone because this is a real genuine question.
Bloodlines in One Piece have skyrocketed to the forefront with special families.
And I'm gonna start out by saying Bloodlines no, but Prophecy yes. Because I don't like that Luffy is like some special reincarnated god that was meant to bring freedom to everyone and all that. Like, it seems a little cliche. I don't know why Oda kind of went with that.
Races and inherited lineages and traits beyond just will being the most important aspect of the story since basically Whole Cake Island if we're being honest. Many people have made claims on this point, and in all honesty the recent developments of bloodlines, races, and predetermination has left a sour taste in the mouths of most One Piece.
It's really more of a prophecy thing. Like, that's it. It's prophecy. Bloodlines no.
Fans mind included. But are we overreacting and raising our pitchforks too early, or is One Piece too far gone already? In this video I'm going to be going over the importance of bloodlines and prophecy in One Piece.
I mean, I do remember past complaints about Sanji basically not being a regular guy and he's like a robot or whatever, or you know, he's part android or whatever. It's just like, it does feel kind of cliche at times, and it's just like, it would feel a lot more realistic if all of the Straw Hats were just kind of like normal people in a way. But apparently even Zoro might be related to Sword God Ryuma and all of that.
Whether or not Nepo Piece is real, what bloodlines done right should look like,
Yeah, it feels like nepotism, man.
and many more points going over the current direction this section of the story seems to be going into. Starting off, I want to go into why exactly bloodlines are currently so important in One Piece. Not in a let me explain the last few arcs to you kind of way, but more of a why this is a useful narrative tool now of all times.
Like with Doflamingo, it worked out pretty well. Like Doflamingo, I'm fine with his bloodline being celestial dragons or whatever. Like, I'm chill with it.
Family's bloodlines and races in One Piece serve as a tool in the same way that devil fruits and crews do. Being a part of a family is essentially like being a part of a pirate crew. It's a new history that we don't know, and it gives you ties to other people in that family like their crewmates. Take Sanji and Whole Cake Island for example. The Germa plotline.
My issue with Luffy being like the sun god or being Nika is like, it makes it feel like this was all fate, and like Luffy, it just takes away from Luffy of his own will wanting to become the Pirate King, and it turns it into this thing where it's like, oh, this was destiny, this was fated to be.
And a Straw Hat coming away from the crew doesn't work without family involvement because we already did it in one way with Robin.
Now, I do like how Luffy repeatedly says that he's not Nika and that, you know, he's Monkey D. Luffy. Like, I like that he's reinforcing that he's not actually the sun god Nika and that he is his own person. Like, I like that Oda's making Luffy do that.
Being captured / her choosing to leave. Sanji's family essentially serves as another crew reclaiming their crewmate. Same with Kaido and Yamato. They're not part of the same crew, but them being Oni ties them together and gives Kaido a closer bond with Yamato even though they have none family-wise. Yamato takes after Kaido's strength, and by being his daughter, she's essentially a representative of him like a crewmate would be. Same thing with Shanks and the Figurlands. Shanks has no actual relationship with his family and never did, but by being a Figurland, he used it to then get into Marijua by reclaiming that crew kinship, and now is a representative of the Figurland family to the audience even though he doesn't have any actual correlation with them. When we see Straw Hat pirates, we associate what they do with what Luffy can do. When we see the Blackbeard pirates, it's the same thing. Families in One Piece allow us to correlate characters we already know with other characters that we don't know, and allows us to get greater history and insight into both characters that we do and don't know. And this is a useful tool narratively when you've done so many different styles of introductions for characters like Oda has and want to introduce new and interesting characters. What's the best way to hype up a new character instantly? Make them related to a hype character we already know. Want to establish someone's history instantly? Make them the family member of a character we already know and give that character a secondary flashback about the past that they wanted to hide. That's one way that bloodlines work in One Piece, and one reason why they're so important, especially in the Whole Cake section of the story, but that's not why people dislike it so much now. The main reason that people
Bro, Oda might be introducing way too many characters for his own good. Like, he introduces so many new characters every single arc, bro.
people dislike bloodlines, races, and lineage is because of the way it's being used currently in regards to prophecy, namely the Jones and Joy Boy prophecies. Now currently, Luffy and Joy Boy have no bloodline ties, but the way that both are being correlated together is essentially like a bloodline tie. Luffy and Joy Boy are quite literally the exact same. Luffy is Joy Boy's descendant in every way except literally being his descendant.
Didn't the giant robot Emmett literally say that Joy Boy looked just like Luffy?
Same thing with Rocks, Blackbeard, and Davy Jones, except they're actually related. So why is the bloodline prophecy element of the story a useful narrative tool now? The main ways it's useful is that it allows Oda to draw an instantaneous connection to the past and present between characters through Imu. The fact that Imu is 800 years old makes it very easy to have characters skyrocket in importance simply by being similar to the characters that he's seen before. Want to explain why he tries killing Cobra? It's because Cobra's daughter looks just like the woman he's been obsessing over, and Cobra brings
Oh my god, the memes with this has gone crazy. A lot of people are comparing Im to Obito from Naruto, bro. They're saying that Imu is actually just a simp, bro.
that woman up to him. Why do they look the same? Well, because they're literally related. Why is Imu taking an interest in Shirahoshi? Because she's an ancient weapon? Well, how did she get that power? Because she's more than likely a descendant of the original Poseidon. Why is Imu interested in Blackbeard specifically? Because he's tearing up the world and has 2 devil fruits and came out of nowhere? Sure, but why is he any more deadly than Dragon or Kaido is? Why him specifically? Because he's
True.
the son of Rocks and a descendant of Davy Jones. That does it. Oda can single out characters as important a lot. A descendant of Davy Jones, and Kaido is. Why him specifically? Because he's the son of Rocks and
He's the son of Rocks Dizabek.
a descendant of Davy Jones.
And descendant. Okay, so Davy Jones is older than Rocks Dizabek. Okay, cool. I got it.
That does
I haven't actually been keeping up with the manga of One Piece, so that's like, so technically I just got spoiled, but I don't really care. Like I still kind of like it's just like I still like keeping up and knowing like the new characters being introduced in the manga. So like sometimes I'll look at One Piece spoilers, but usually I just don't. It's just
it. Oda can single out characters as important.
Honestly, Elbaf anime arc is already out, so honestly, I was gonna learn about Davy Jones soon enough, so I'm chilling.
A lot easier when they're related to characters who have directly faced Imu in the past. It creates a greater justification for why it took Imu so long to move, because the reason he didn't move is because the people who he cares about stopping simply weren't born yet, and no one in their bloodline was impactful enough for him to have noticed as yet. Imu never gives Dragon a second thought when talking about things that were predetermined, but you want to know what he does think about? Davy Jones, Joy Boy, Vivi, Shirahoshi, and Loki. All people who are descended or connected via lineage to threats he faced in the past. This builds a theme of recurrence
Oh, okay, that's actually kind of cool. Okay.
for Imu, that no matter how long he lives, these things will always come back to haunt him. It's much easier to draw a prophecy narrative this way than say the way that Naruto did with its reincarnation. Luffy being the reincarnation of Joy Boy is something that One Piece fans are terrified of because it's what they clown Naruto fans for. The difference is that in Naruto it doesn't really
Yeah, Naruto and Sasuke are descendants of what? Indra and Ashura, if I'm correct.
matter, but for One Piece, it quite literally breaks the narrative of the story as being predetermined to be something to the point you're just the clone of someone else. It's quite literally the opposite of being free. So do bloodlines and prophecy ruin One Piece then? Well, it kind of depends on what kind of One Piece fan you are. If you're the kind of One Piece fan that expects Imu and the world government to be the end-all be-all, and for the Joy Boy Jones plotline to be the new direction the story is going in, then yes, it might ruin the story for you, because the current era of One Piece we are in is the predetermination part of the story. Writing in a character like Imu was always going to be hard for Oda because there's only so many ways he can explain why it took 900 chapters for the person who's been running the world to make an appearance in the story, and why he's just now taking interest in Luffy.
Yep.
The only way Oda could have done this without creating a prophecy angle is either introduce Imu after Wano when Luffy has established himself as a major figure on the world stage, and then make Imu care about the fact that he's the son of Dragon rather than Joy Boy, or reveal Imu the same time he did but remove the posters of Blackbeard, Shirahoshi, and Luffy, and just make Imu the background villain that simply doesn't care about what's going on until it's too late. Imu having an interest in Luffy and Blackbeard built into his introduction, and that massive straw hat makes his character the reason why a prophecy and bloodlines based narrative is the only path forward, as it's the only way you explain Imu. If Imu is your final villain pick, then the story is going to end like Naruto because Imu himself says this was all set into motion long ago, and that everything
Honestly, I feel like at this point, low key, I feel like the final villain is either gonna be. I feel like Oda might pull like a Madara Uchiha, and either like Davy Jones or Rocksteady Zebek will be like the final villain in One Piece or something. Like one of them is gonna get revived or something. Um, I feel like Emu is not going to be the final villain in One Piece. It really it could it might be Blackbeard. I don't think Emu is going to be the final villain. I don't know why. I just don't think so.
Happening right now is inevitable. If Emu is your last big bad, the way he gets defeated was inevitable and was something he knew could happen the whole time. He knew Joyway would come back, meaning Luffy was always going to be this way, and he knew Jones was going to come back, so everything concerning Blackbeard was not luck, was not fate, it was prophecy. Same with Shirahoshi being born the same time as Luffy, same with Loki being too young to sail with rocks, but just old enough to experience Blackbeard and Luffy. If you hate the Naruto route for the story, you will hate the story of One Piece if Emu is the direction it closes out with. But is One Piece actually going to end that way? Now that we've seen Emu, now that he's getting ready to fight, what is the direction that we're going into? Elbaf is going to be one of the most consequential arcs for not just the story itself, but for the narrative of everything after it, because this is what decides who the final villain of the story will be. If Emu wins this arc, and I don't mean a small victory, I mean a landslide victory, there's a very good chance that he's the final antagonist. If Emu doesn't sweep, let's say he wins a little but Luffy gets a W in another way, then he might not be the final villain, and there's always the possibility he also loses in Elbaf. I'm saying all of this to say
Yeah.
that there's no way
A lot of people are thinking Luffy is going to lose in Elbaf along with Loki losing.
to tell right now if One Piece is going to end like Naruto. People who are trying to treat Blackbeard and Luffy like Naruto and Sasuke, calling Emu a Kaguya Madara or Zetsu clone, are simply just jumping the gun. That's the road that the Emu plotline would lead down, yes, but that's assuming that Emu is the only candidate for final villain, which he's not. Like, this
Bro, low-key Shanks might be the final villain before Luffy reaches Laugh Tale or whatever, or before Luffy reaches like the One Piece and all that.
regarding Blackbeard completely, there are still multiple avenues the story
Bro, watch Shanks be the final villain or final antagonist for Luffy.
can go down after Emu if he were to lose this arc. We still have stuff to take care of on Dragon's side. Shamrock and Garling are also major world government threats. Facing Shanks is something we're going to have to do eventually. Buggy is going to come
Wait, Shamrock? I know Garling. Is Shamrock like Shanks' father or something? Who is Shamrock?
are also major world government threats. Facing Shanks is something we're going to have to do eventually. Buggy is going to come into conflict with Luffy at some point, and we still have to face the Navy as well. Emu could die this arc and we'd still have a whole story
Bro, the final war for One Piece is going to be so peak, man. It might be better than Marineford.
left to tell. And this is all disregarding Blackbeard, by the way. We won't need to be afraid of whether or not One Piece will copy the endings of other stories for at least until the end of Elbaf, and maybe about 10 or so chapters after that point, because that's when you can really see the finish line for One Piece. Now that I've gone over that portion, another aspect I want to tackle is the nepotism in One Piece. Nepo Piece, like with all the other Bloodline stuff, has been an Elbaf special. Nepotism in One Piece doesn't exist by the definition of nepotism, because outside of Shanks and the Holy Knights, no one has gone to where they are because they're someone's kid. Even with Shanks, the main reason he got that spot wasn't because he was Garling's kid necessarily, but because he was a celestial dragon with potential on par with Shamrock, which is less family nepotism than it is just being fit for the qualifications. For someone to be Nepo in One Piece, them being someone's child would literally have to be the main reason why they made it this far into the story. You'd have to discount all of their own hard work, their decades of grinding, and the struggles they faced, and boil it down to you were X's kid, so of course you ended up here. The thing we have to understand about this in One Piece is that characters are not really special because of their lineages are special because of the characters. No one cares about the people in the Davy clan besides Rocks, Blackbeard, and Davy Jones, and the only reason their lineage is important is because the characters themselves were important before we even knew they were tied together via lineage. Davy Jones was important before we knew he was an ancestor of Rocks and Blackbeard. Blackbeard was important before we knew his name was Rocks or Davy. Zebek was important before we knew he was connected to
Good points. This is true.
Davy Jones or Blackbeard's dad. Shanks was important before we even knew he was a Fagarland, and Ace was important before we knew he had Gold D attached to his name. In One Piece, a child's parents don't really give them anything besides a name and maybe some bloodline traits if they're of a different race. Outside of being a race other than human, being someone's kid literally grants you 0 buffs. Luffy was not superhuman from birth because he was Garp's grandson.
Yeah, this isn't like maybe freaking actually, I don't know what to compare this to. Is there really any I'm trying to think of an anime where like the kid is super strong due to his parents' lineage. Maybe Bleach, Ichigo, I guess.
Blackbeard did not inherit Zebek's strength as far as we can see. From what we see
Bro, Ichigo's bloodline consists of like everything. Soul Reaper, Hollow, everything, man.
with Shanks, he seemed to be more skilled and capable at an earlier age than Garling was, and Loki ended up doing things his father couldn't have probably never even dreamed of doing at his age. Momonosuke is probably the only person you can say got things handed to him via being the son of Odin, because Sukiyaki has no special traits that Odin inherited from him, but Momo gets Odin's physique just because he's his son. If most characters in One Piece were like this, then yes, the nepotism allegations might stick, but they're not. Family names in One Piece are just that, family names. Even Yamato didn't inherit strength from Kaido because she was simply born a different race other than human. She still had to work to get as strong as she is now. None of Big Mom's kids inherited her monster strength, they all had to get it out.
Yeah, that's fair. So, like literally what he's saying just goes back to bloodlines not being the main issue, but rather prophecy, because prophecy directly counters freedom. Because if Luffy is meant to represent freedom, it shouldn't be like a prophecy that he's doing what he's doing. Like, it shouldn't be part of fate. It should be his own volition, his own will.
The mud, even though their mother granted them most of what they needed to succeed. Coming to the end of the video, the last section of this topic I want to go over is what do bloodlines done right in One Piece look like? What are we as a community okay with when characters get revealed to be part of a special family or bloodline? Bloodlines in One Piece outside of the prophecy stuff is actually done right basically every single time.
You see what he literally just said? He said bloodlines are done right in One Piece outside of the prophecy stuff. So he literally agrees with me.
Bloodlines in One Piece outside of the prophecy stuff is actually done right basically every.
So you see, even he didn't need to title his video like this. It's still fine, but he doesn't have an issue with bloodlines. He has an issue with prophecy.
Single time. The issue that people are having is less with the bloodlines themselves and more with the prophecy angle, which, like I said, that's a wait and see thing. Is less with the bloodlines themselves and more with the prophecy angle, which, like I said, that's a wait and see thing. No one had an issue with the Monkey D's because that was introduced to us relatively earlier into the story, so it was never a Luffy's only special because of Dragon and Garp, but a damn, Garp and Dragon are related to Luffy kind of thing. This is how bloodlines are basically always done. It's always a, oh, you're related to this person? Wow, that's pretty crazy. Bloodlines and relationships serve to move the plot forward a lot more in the story than we tend to realize as well. Marineford is literally a bloodline saga. I already went over Whole Cake, and this also happens in Dressrosa 2 with Doflamingo and his family as well as King Riku and his family. The hate for nepotism and bloodline ties is a bit of a heavy overreaction because of the beef One Piece fans have with Naruto fans. The Davy clan is not like the Uchiha. Blackbeard did not inherit some Sharingan or Kekkei Genkai from being a Davy that only he has, and that's what makes him so busted. Luffy didn't get the Ashura path from Joy Boy, and that's why he's so busted. These are all still characters that had to build themselves up to get where they are. Once Imu's defeated at the end of this arc, that's what I believe anyways, we can go back to being a pirate story about fate, luck, and dreams, and not predetermination and prophecy. It could also very well end up being the case that Oda writes Luffy simply breaking free from the prophecy and changing up fate completely, but I don't really know how he does that if Joy Boy is prophesied to win regardless, but I'm not the one writing the story, so I can't really say. I'm also a part of the knee-jerk reaction.
It's all just, I mean, the ball's in Oda's court. It's just up to what he wants to do, what he decides for his story. Hopefully he makes the right choice.
Community, so I'd be a hypocrite if I dissed y'all for it, but it's simply a matter of letting the topic cool down for a little bit before we start getting too mad about it. It's kind of why I decided to make this video now instead of right after a chapter where the bloodline angles come into the forefront, because I know the entire comment section would probably be telling me how bad it is for the future of the story. Whether bloodlines, prophecy, and lineage make or break the story depends on how this fight with Imu goes, in all honesty. I do have a video planned for my 1180 predictions as well as my prediction for the end of Elbaf, as I think we're getting close to that point now, so stay tuned in for that one.
So ultimately, to end off, there's no issue with bloodlines, but there is a huge issue with prophecy in One Piece.